Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. This is Bill Stevens. You are on Iron Radio. I am a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, football coach, and maker of many awesome things for awesome people.
Nice. This is Dr. Mike Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet certification, which opens again June 17th through June 24th. Associate professor of the Carrick Institute, and back from teaching a 2-day seminar on conditioning in just south of Amsterdam with my buddy Luke Lehman from Muscle Nerds.
Yes.
This is Coach Darrell from Strength Guild in KC. I am a gym owner, weightlifting coach, and strength and conditioning coach for both youth and adults.
Sweet. That's going to come up today, everybody. Yep. We're going to talk about time frames for development, youth, and how it bleeds into adulthood and all that kind of stuff. And I am Lonnie Lowry, a former competitive bodybuilder. I was a professor for 25 years, still adjunct, still consulting for food industry and academia and stuff like that. This week, just to share some of the science news here.
Strength and muscle sport news.
It looks like intermittent fasting is back in the spotlight. This has been a real pendulum, and we've talked about it on the show many times. But, what's better? Intermittent fasting, where you actually go through periods where, frankly, you're just a little hungry. You're fasting for some period of time, versus just overall calorie restriction. This one suggests, well, let me give you the title. Intermittent fasting may improve weight and overall health. So I got this. This is written by Savannah Logan, science journalist, a good one. Derived from a new study published in Nature Communications, actually. So if people aren't familiar, the journal Nature is about as high as you can get as far as, reputation and that kind of thing in the science world. So when things percolate up to this level, it was a big time lab or something is, has some gravitas. Anyway, it says a new study published in Nature Communications has shown intermittent fasting may improve weight, gut health, and metabolism compared to simply reducing calories. Now, again, I know people are like, well, you guys are just talking about it's just all basically calorie reduction. You're going to see this pendulum swing back and forth, right? So we're just swinging to the right. Bear with me. Mm-hmm. It says the study included 41 participants who were overweight or obese at the start. They were divided into two groups. One group was assigned intermittent fasting, and here's the catch, I think, with protein pacing, while the other group was assigned to a heart-healthy, calorie-restricted diet as a control. The two groups consumed the same number of calories, but the timing and the composition of the meals were different. And to me, this makes it sticky, right? Because it's not just timing. You're not just looking at the chronobiology of periods of fasting. The composition is a little different. So they define this a bit. Protein pacing is a dietary technique in which high-protein meals of 25 to 50 grams per meal are evenly spaced throughout the day. Now, that just sounds like something we've all done forever, right? Like every couple of hours, get your protein. But intermittent fasting is a popular eating pattern that includes cycles of eating and fasting throughout the day or over the course of the week. And again, before Mike even asked, I don't have the methodological gory details about how long they fasted and was it for days of the week or was it hours within the day? But it says participants in the study ate their assigned diet for 8 weeks. Results showed that after the 8-week intervention, those in the intermediate fasting group had lost more weight, had better gut health, and had better metabolic responses than the control group. Their microbiotas were more diverse, and they had higher levels of microbes, again in their large intestines, associated with lean body types. So that's interesting stuff. Like I said, without being able to do a deep dive into this, I'm left wondering, how was the fasting done? How long was it? Mm-hmm. Was it within a day? Was it across the course of a week? My takeaway looking at this is that, well, I kind of started this way, and I'll see what you think, especially Mike, but being hungry at times is probably good. It's natural. Always being fed is probably not the best idea. This does look like, though, they're trying to keep the protein in the background, 25 to 50 grams with this protein pacing technique while they're fasting. I like this because in the past I've heard a lot of stuff about, if you eat red meat, it's bad for your gut microbiota and it's bad for, colon cancer risk and blah, 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 blah. So at least here they're not demonizing protein. I think they're saying, hey, the protein periodically and regularly is good. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Mike, as far as like where we are right now, or are we anywhere with calorie restriction versus periods of intermittent fasting?
Oh, semi-short answer. I would say I started using intermittent fasting probably 12 plus years ago now. The Flex Diet Cert, it actually ended up being the second intervention, which kind of surprised me. The thing that surprised me the most was compliance on it. If you do it correctly and you kind of ramp into it, was pretty good. Because I was looking for a way to increase metabolic flexibility without, using exercise or movement. So like what other things can we do? And if you fast, then you're going to lower your levels of insulin. It's going to push your body to use more fat. Long story short, I have used intermittent fasting for quite some time. And in this study, it sounds like it's an intermittent fasting using protein also, which if they're having them do it more often than once or twice a week, probably a good idea. Like I usually do one longer fast for 19 to 24 hours once a week. Very few people have gone up to twice. I don't use any protein or anything in that, what I call kind of the original version. A lot of this goes back to Brad Pilon's book, Eat, Stop, Eat. I do think that if you are expanding that to multiple days per week, that, you probably want to try to protect some lean body mass and having protein is a good idea. And I played around with different versions of it a lot. And the thing that I ran into when I started increasing multiple meals during the day of just protein, one was there wasn't that benefit of, hey, you just don't have to eat today, so don't even think about it. Like, you don't have to make any food. Like, you don't have to do anything. You might be a little hungry. Have some more electrolytes, have some more fluid. You're good to go. Oh, crap. Now I got to stop and make some food. Oh, okay. So that benefit you just sold me on is no longer there. And then I also realized most people, not everyone, but most people, even when they started eating protein, and I found this for myself, I just got hungrier as opposed to if I just didn't do anything and did think about food. And it was much harder on the compliance side. Like, I could, white knuckle my way through it. But there was just something about even just eating protein that the odds of me eating other stuff at that point just went up astronomically. But again, I know this study was more just probably looking at the physiology of it, not necessarily the psychology also.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I feel you with that. And, I wanted to say one thing about this because I am going to gravitate in that direction this summer, I think, where I'm going to go through periods. I mean, I'm not trying to take up more space anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still want to take up about 200 pounds worth of space, but you know what I mean. But I'm going to just, like what you're saying, not eat for periods. Like the other day, I just didn't eat breakfast. And I was hungry as hell for about an hour, and then it kind of faded.
Yeah, especially if you're used to eating breakfast all the time.
Yep.
That time you normally eat, you're like, whoa, and then it kind of passes.
Oh, yeah. Now, here's my problem with it. When I do this protein pacing, because the bodybuilders always done this, right? I mean, 25 to 50 grams, like 4 times a day. Mike, I know you've employed that. We've all done that.
Yeah.
My problem with that is that I'm like, oh, well, it's been 4 hours. I don't want to lose muscle mass. I always joke with my wife, like my metabolism is dining on my pecs, like I don't want to lose muscle mass. But then what happens is I eat a protein bar. Well, that's not just protein, or I eat a string cheese. Well, that's not just protein. It's not a bad choice overall, but I'm not just getting protein. The only way that I've done this effectively with the protein pacing kind of thing was the low dose protein, that whole pulse fast diet thing that Chris Shugart was championing years ago, where I just filled up a giant, 2-liter jug.
Yeah.
It had my fluids. It had, some extra leucine and low dose like protein in there. And I would just literally sip a very prescribed amount, like every 90 minutes or something like that. But then I didn't have to think about making food, to your point, Mike. All I did was just, because it was had measurements down the side, I would just drink down a certain amount. So behaviorally, I could do that. And that's how I fasted on Fridays. That's all I did on Fridays, like that 1 day a week kind of deal. To your point, Mike, I'm a huge fan of getting out from under the constant insulin burden that Americans live under. And even athletes, if you're constantly eating, your body doesn't even know what it's like to fast. And I do think Phil's mentioned this in the past. Oh. We're built for it. We're built to be hungry. We're built for seasonal fasting, or even within a week. If your roving tribe didn't find some berries or kill a deer, then I guess you didn't eat that night. It's not that big a deal because you're probably going to get something tomorrow. There's an apple tree. Another take home from this is that they're really focused on the microbiota. I think it's interesting they had a higher level of microbes, that the ones that we know are associated with leanness, right? Because my introduction to the whole gut microbiota, and I think you guys know this, but was, oh my God, it was 20 years ago plus, where that experiment where they basically took all of the bacteria out of obese rats, they put it in and they got fat. They got real fat. And they were actually saying it's got a bigger impact than the genes, than your own genes. Yeah. So that's crazy, So yes, there's been a huge trend since we've been doing this show in 2009 for this recognition that your gut microbiota has a huge impact because of what it secretes into your body, essentially, or how it affects absorption of different, nutrients and calories and stuff. So this seems to be a mechanism, right? That, it really helps your gut microbiota, and that's might be better than just, the typical almost Mediterranean diet with calorie restriction kind of thing, where I'm just going to eat a little less at every meal, because I've never liked portion control, to be honest. It's bullshit. It's frustrating to eat postage stamp sized portions of your favorite foods. It's diabolical.
And that's why I found the fasting thing helped, because like even in the Flex Diet Cert, it's like, here's some other guidelines to follow. Like eat, like Phil would say, don't eat like an asshole. Eat like a reasonable adult. And if you add 1 day of a progressively long fast, for 80% of people, if they did that, like they can get pretty lean relatively easy. Now, obviously, there's going to be a threshold there where it's going to be a little different and much more difficult for everyone. But most people don't need to overly make it complicated.
I know for me, it's just easy. Like you said, portion control is hard. Portion control is much harder than, like Mike was talking about. If I have a little bit to eat and I'm hungry, that's much harder than just none. Just keep eating none. And like, it's just, I love those blatant rules. Like, okay, you get nothing. Oh, okay, all right, I'll deal with that. That's a lot easier to me than you get 2 ounces of steak. Two ounces? Like, I'm just going to be mad.
F you.
Yeah, I don't really have, like, for normal clients and stuff like that, it's based on whatever their schedule is more so than anything else. But for me, it's hard for me to get up at 3:45, 3:30 to get breakfast before coming in at 5. So I end up fasting, quote unquote, just because, and I don't, I would prefer to just cook and have a meal, not do, where you do this. I don't really love reheated food all the time. I'll do it if I have to, but I'd rather cook, sit down, eat, then go do whatever. It's easier for me to just sit down and eat 1,000 calories than it is for me to eat. If I'm cutting, it'd be 6 300 calorie meals like that is difficult for me, or less than that, more than that.
I mean, to be fair with all this, it's not just portion control. I mean, there's that whole volumetrics idea where you can just eat a gigantic, salad with some grilled chicken on it, and you're basically still getting almost nothing but protein, and you're eating a large amount of food. But again, that doesn't always exactly satisfy. Yeah, for me, it's just going to be, I'm just going to try some fasting. I mean, so let's say I lose a couple grams of protein out of my body because I just went with no food at all. Yeah. So what? Ultimately, so what? I mean, I do think resistance training in your life should be an important part of all this, obviously. If you weren't lifting, that creates additional problems, But I can tell you, working in the food industry, there was always this search for protein being, and certain amino acids, of course, leucine stands out, but as a stimulus for muscle protein synthesis. It's its own stimulus. But man, compared to lifting, everything's going to pale. Yes, you have to eat or you'll waste away. I mean, the starvation experiments and Ansel Keys and all that. But yeah, so long as lifting is part of it, I'm just not going to worry. I'm fine. I'm not going to eat because when I do try to get that protein pacing idea, like I said, it's not just protein. And so I haven't lost much weight. I mean, I put on some weight when I had my ankle rebuilt, about 7 pounds or so, and it hasn't come off. I was thinking about what Phil was saying not that long ago about, it's okay to fluctuate throughout the year. You'll get more active in the summer. It'll come back off. I'm not sure at 55 years old it's going to come back off unless I do something fairly dramatic. So constantly eating is basically what I've been doing. Yes, it's mostly protein things, like I said, but I think I'm just going to not occasionally, and I'm just going to have to become okay with that. It's not like that couple of grams a day. I'm on some mesocycle where that's going to end up being the additional 4 pounds of lean mass when I step on stage, and that's going to be a PR. I'm not stepping on stage. So plus or minus 4 pounds, I'm not sure I care about that if I can get my body fat way down.
Yeah, and the modified version I've been working on, which I haven't made public until now, is based on the Jorn Tromulan study, so 100 grams of protein. I'd have people do 2 modified fasts per week, but they would eat 100 grams of protein at breakfast, and then they actually would not eat until the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have something that would still increase muscle protein synthesis for 12 plus hours. If they want to have a protein shake in the evening before they go to bed, great. And then you've whacked out a whole 36 hours of calories. But for people who are very worried about lean body mass loss, especially if you're pushing the envelope with cutting calories more aggressively, then that seems to work. I'm still testing it out in a few more test rabbits, but you only have to cook once per day then too. So that also reduces the thing of, well, now I got to cook every 4 times a day. It's like just reheat something for in the morning and then have a pre-made protein shake in the evening, and that's it for the day. So you still have that long period where you're not having to do meal prep and your risk of eating half your kitchen because now you're hungry goes up.
Right. Mike, I was just talking to a food marketer colleague, and he said, what's new with protein? And I mentioned the Jorn Tromulan thing. We used to say you kind of peak out around 30-ish grams of protein, and then you have this refractory period, and then you need to reintroduce. I mean, this whole protein pacing in this article is kind of along those lines. But yeah, that does throw a monkey wrench into it. Like, we'll just do it all at once. And it's going to linger much longer than we would have thought. So, and that's another example. What have we said over the years of homeostasis ruining all of your complicated plans, right? Oh, I have all these systems and plans, and all of your cleverness just gets beat to shit from nature, because nature, it all comes out in the wash is what I'm saying, so often. And of course it does if you really think about it, because again, to the point that Phil often makes is seasonal changes and everything else. Yeah, your body better work that way. If it had to be 40 grams every 4 hours, how's that going to work in any society other than what we're in now? Like,
if it didn't work,
gather, forget it.
If it didn't work, the human race wouldn't exist. We'd be dead.
You feast your ass off on the big kill. You got a big elk or deer or whatever, and you feast hundreds of grams of protein. Your body's just going to ignore everything above like 30 grams and not.
Oh yeah, that was.
It doesn't make a lot of sense,
Like when they always touted, like, your body can't digest more than 30 grams at a time. Well, I've never pooped out a steak.
Right.
When I sit down and eat a big ass steak, And for me, it was a big part of this was as a large mammal that existed for 20 plus years, needing to be at least 275. It has been nice to be hungry. And I used to do that after meats. Like, that was a big thing for me. Like, I'd do a meat and I'd have to just cram in all the time. Like, after, it's like, guys, I just want to be hungry. I don't want it. I just want to not eat. And it felt good to be hungry. And now I'm just used to it. Like, most days I'll wake up and I just, like you said, I quit eating breakfast. Maybe noon I get hungry, and I'll have some. And then my wife's the opposite. She quits eating before 5 because she just does better that way. And,
Yeah, some people do. Mm-hmm.
So she sleeps better if she doesn't eat late, and so yeah, it's not a bad thing to be hungry. It's like for somebody who hasn't, like the average American who just consumes all the time, it's a weird feeling. You know, it's almost like it registers as pain. Like, oh, I'm a little hungry.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yes.
like we talked. It's like with infants, of course. An infant bawls when they get their first shot because that's the worst thing that's happened to them. Like these people haven't been hungry in so long,
They
it
panic.
registers as something much worse than it is.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
natural to be hungry. So
I have an article on my hard drive where they used CBT. They just used some cognitive behavioral therapy, and they got people to be okay with being a little hungry. You know, they would do it in a very controlled environment. You know how it is with desensitizing people. And it's like, everything's okay. Describe the feelings. Don't just go hysterical. Don't panic. And anyway, they did much better than just, I think they had some counselors working with one group and dietitians working with another, if I remember. This was years ago. But basically, the people that got some of the counseling not to panic and go perceive it as pain, like you're saying. I mean, ultimately, you have to get okay with being a little hungry.
Yeah.
At least sometimes. My buddy Steve, another industry guy, he's lost 50 pounds, and he's mostly just doing calorie restriction. I don't think he's doing it in periods of fasting, but he did say something that fits with this, which is, you know, I just had to become okay again with being hungry occasionally, you know, or even regularly. If you can be mildly uncomfortable, that shouldn't be a reason to panic. And I think that's what I'm going to work on this summer is just skipping meals, essentially, which is funny because that's for years we grew up being told never skip breakfast, most important meal of the day, or don't skip meals, period, because then you're apt to binge. But so long as you know that that's coming, you know, that you might be really hungry this evening, and you just have to have a plan for it. You know, like what am I going to do so I don't wipe out 2 pizzas?
Well, yeah, and then we also have the opposite. Like if you're dealing with, which I've dealt with a bunch of times, you know, you get the 17-year-old, 165-pound kid that comes in and he wants to be the next world's strongest man or an NFL lineman or beat Dan Bell's records, and they eat like a rabbit. And it's like dealing with these people and making them understand that, like, if you're not full, you need to go eat.
Yeah.
It's the total opposite.
And
that's the thing. If you want to be a super large mammal and like be just unusually strong, like you got to do what you got to do. Like my strength is plummeted comparatively to when I was cramming in food.
17, 165. Where are you getting these monsters? Gosh. 15-year-old was 6'2", 135 when he walked
Oh
in.
my goodness.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's either way, like you're saying, opposites. Either way, your satiety, your hunger and satiety system is built to keep you pretty much where you are, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a skinny kid, you have to eat with utility in mind. Like your your alarm goes off on your Apple Watch or whatever, time to eat. I'm not hungry. I used to say that to some of the college guys. I don't care. But Doc, I'm not hungry. I don't care.
Yeah.
Don't eat until you throw up. I'm not, because that's counterproductive.
Yes.
But you cannot let hunger be your guide. And it's the same thing with trying to lose weight. You can't let hunger be your your guide. You have to say utility over hunger. And again, I don't want to malnourish developing kids or anything like that, or force feed them until they burst or vomit. But at the same time, it's like that old principle about you've got to be somewhat uncomfortable. And I know this sounds like the flex, principle again with Mike, but new stimuli are going to bring some element of discomfort. If you're not feeling some element, even minor discomfort, you're probably not at the edges of where your body's going to change. And if you just eat until you're comfy and you satisfy your hunger, whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, I don't think it's going to work. You can't rely on that homeostatic
your body
mechanism.
If you have a goal aside from being average, which today's average is pretty poor, like your body lies to you. It's flat out lying to you. Like you can't just listen to your body. Like if I ate every time I was hungry, I'd be 600 pounds.
That's kind of right.
It just is what it is. So
it was a report. I don't think it was any like deliberate research. I can't remember, but it's the basically the Asian kids in math, like one of the central reasons is that they're made to sit with the problem and be uncomfortable and for like 40% longer than our kids are. And it's like their hypothesis is just that the discomfort is where the growth happens. So, and I would say that's just because maybe it's the area I'm in, but the priority for comfort is like, I would say maybe at an all-time high. Like as far as like being uncomfortable going into something, whatever it is, where it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good and nothing, like quit, whatever. And like that, just that concept of like, no, you need to sit in the discomfort for a while, like push through it to some degree, like not push through, some crazy pain thing, but like you want to put on weight, you want to put on muscle mass, you're going to have to be uncomfortable with, food for a little bit. Like you're going to have to eat, you're going to have to do this, just do this thing.
No, and that's a good one. That's feeds right into it. Like if you want to be something more than average, like that is found in discomfort. If you want to be the best, you're going to face a lot of discomfort of some sort.
Right? No pain, no gain.
Just the way it is. Yeah, and that's an old saying, but it's true. So
yeah. When you're talking about sensations, sometimes I have to remind clients that even if they're trying to gain weight or lose weight, that just doing an action based on the sensation you felt got you to where you're at now. So you can't just, if you want to go see the scale go down, you're probably going to be a little bit hungry. If you want to see the scale go up, then you're probably going to eat more when you are not hungry. So we need a plan to modify and to change, not necessarily the sensation you're getting, but the action we're going to do based on that sensation. Because doing what you've always done gets you to where you're at now, which you just told me you don't want to be here. So and sometimes they're like, oh, so this means I'm going to be a little bit hungry? Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. It's not unlike, and I know we got to go to break here, but it's not unlike what my wife deals with mental health. It's like they want change, but they don't want to do it. They're like, well, you do it, Kelly. You're my counselor. This is on you. Well, then you're missing the basic foundation principle here that you have to participate, with your coping skills or habit forming or whatever.
Well, and this feeds into the whole way society is now. Like nobody wants to do anything to reach their goals. They want to stay comfortable. And that feeds right into the pharmaceuticals. Like everybody just wants a pill. Give me, doctor, just prescribe me something so I can keep eating like an asshole but be lean. Or, look at the drastic, I forgot, I put it up the other day, or I talked about it not long ago. Like there was some article came out that like 60% of women that go to the gym are now using PEDs. Like they're looking for an easy way out. And then you got people like Dave. It's like, all you fuckers that aren't competing, stay off the drugs. Leave them for us. Leave this for the people that actually want to do something with them.
You have higher goals, right?
Besides looking okay at the high school reunion.
I remember talking about that. The hypocrisy just kills me, right? Because bodybuilders were always the poster children for, oh, look, that's drugs and shame on them. And, oh, they're even injecting stuff. And it's like, now everybody's injecting stuff. For physique reasons. Go figure. Once the gen pop wants it, it's not unethical at all anymore.
Oh, yeah. The funny thing is all the fuckers out there like taking semaglutide and bitching about athletes using performance-enhancing drugs. It's like,
exactly,
dude, what do you think you're doing?
Exactly.
You're doing the same thing.
Hypocrites.
Yep.
Anyway. All right. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk about youth development and time frames and all that kind of stuff. For people who are, if you don't have, a youth team in your life, a lot of this is going to spill over. So stick around. I know people on YouTube and podcasts, stick around to the end. I don't want to do that necessarily, but even as an adult, was this poor foundation that society is providing now, is that affecting you in some way? Are you old enough that it doesn't affect you? There's a lot of outcomes with all this stuff. So, we'll be back.
Hey, everybody. Iron Radio is back and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Okay, everybody. Like Lonnie talked about, what we're going to talk about is, I want to just have a panel discussion here about, has society changed the age at which we need to start thinking about physical education for kids? Outside of school or whatever, because it's largely gone. But, because what we're seeing, and we've talked about it numerous times, I know Jarrell has, and I know I have, and, the kids I get in now are light years behind the kids I used to get in even 20 years ago. And those kids were light years behind where my generation was, or generations prior. And that's easy to say. It's easy to say, well, you're just being an old curmudgeon. And, no, but it's not. The amount of kids that can't do a push-up, that can't control their body, they can't, and it's easy to see out on the street, like we talked about before. And when I was a kid, 40, almost 50 years ago, you couldn't pass a park and see a group of kids doing physical stuff. And now it's weird to pass a park and see a kid doing physical stuff.
Yeah.
And so, has the age at which we need to intervene, and like Mike talked about, it's almost to the point where, we need to prescribe life to youngsters because they're not getting it. And, at what age do you think it's safe to start some kind of physical education for children? Because we've all heard it before, you can't do resistance training until they're 16 or whatever, because growth plates and, oh my goodness, and things like that. But then it's all gone overboard. And now the average kid, they've got really strong thumbs from all their devices,
right?
And everything else is underdeveloped. And I'm not talking just physical, muscle and things like that. Hand-eye coordination and things like that have gone out the window. Here, catch this ball, kid, and it hits him in the face. They just don't do it.
Phil, you mentioned safe at one point there. Sometimes I almost feel like we're so hypersensitive. Is unsupervised activity too dangerous? Are we so? You can use the term hypersensitive, or is this stuff like monkey bars or
Yes.
A merry-go-round? Talk about challenging your vestibular apparatus. You get thrown off the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Cascade across the playground is but that's that's all challenging your nervous system and your hand-eye coordination. But what if you fall on the monkey bars, or what if you skin your knee off the merry-go-round? It's I don't even know. When you look at playgrounds now, they don't seem to have all these same things.
No.
Some of them might have some monkey bars, but again, is unsupervised activity verboten now? Is that taboo? Because it never used to be.
No,
and that's why you did get blasted in the face with a Nerf football, or even a real football.
And that was the thing that me and my wife decided early on with our kids is you see these so-called, everybody calls them helicopter parents or whatnot. They're protecting their kid from any stimulus that could be perceived as painful. And it's yeah, we watch our kids closely, but literally I would let my kids fuck up. He's going to fall. Watch him. As long as basically I was on death watch. Don't do anything that will kill you. And I would stop you. But if you're about to do something dumb and run into that wall, I know you're not going to die. You're going to learn something from it.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And, we're at this point where, like we said, everybody wants to be comfortable. It's they're not even allowing their kids outside of a comfort zone. And,
I guess,
let them go run and play.
I would ask, where do you guys think the line was, I guess, timeline-wise, where fitness, physical culture became, it's, at least in our society, greater society, is thought of as a commodity, not a principle, basically? Where's the line? What time frame would you say that kind of started to at least shift, or we ended up on the other side of it? Because I'd say that's where we are now.
I'd say we are too.
Where we are now. The first thing people will cut out of their life is whatever, the gym, physical conditioning, whatever it is. They'll cut that out first before they cut anything else. They'll work more, go to work and do whatever more, So the boundaries are never set for physical fitness. It's always, something else is, whatever it is. Even like, not even say work, but like Netflix. Netflix will come before,
Yes.
training or whatever, or like just like a physical practice.
I mean, it's definitely escalated greatly since the advent of the smartphone, and social media. Like you see kids, like that's their new outlet. Their new outlet is Roblox and just different games on the internet. That's how they like interact with one another now. Compared to when we were kids, we interacted physically. But I don't know. You see it go further back than that. Like I've seen like old. They're not political ads, but whatever they are. Like when JFK came out, like we have a weak society. We need our boys doing monkey bars and blah. And you saw that in Roosevelt and stuff. Like there was an importance in that. And now it's like. That ain't shit for physical. Like physical activity is not pushed as an educational thing at all anymore, and it's been in our lifetime. I feel like that it's really taken a downturn. Like physical activity is not important to society, and that goes along with the whole toxic masculinity thing. Like physical things is still seen as a masculine thing, even though now, like we've talked about on numerous shows, that. Like women are doing amazing physical things now, but like the whole society has downplayed the importance of just physical activity outside of the comfort zone to our detriment, I feel.
It'd almost be interesting to look at a list of physical activity things that kids did, and not always supervised. I mean, we would climb trees, for example. I'm not advocating kids go climb trees, but when you're hanging onto a tree limb, you're trying not to die. Like you're really squeezing, stuff. What it takes to climb a tree is a big deal. And that's the kind of stuff that happened all the time.
Yes.
And now I don't know if anybody would go for such a radical idea.
No. And,
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is again, like we talked about it with nutrition, like many generations ago, nutrition was totally different because it had to be. Many years ago as well, not even, I'd say less than with the food, like physical activity for youth was the norm. Like literally people had babies to man their farm. The minute Johnny could carry a bucket of water, he was doing it. But somehow, if I have little Johnny do 5 lunges, that's bad for him. That's dangerous. Like literally they had kids like 6 years old helping plow fields and they didn't die. Well, I mean, some of them did. They got like caught in the plow or something, but that was part of the danger. I mean, we're not as weak of an organism, and kids are not as unresilient as people think they are. Like they can handle some stressors. Now, I'm not saying take your 5-year-old and put a 135-pound squat bar on their back. Like the amount of training I have kids do is dependent on the individual. Like I've had 6-year-olds that can come in and they are very attuned and attentive and they can handle training. Like they'll listen, they'll do what I ask them. And I've had other 6-year-olds that it's like squirrel,
Yeah.
And they have no attention span, and we'll have them do different things like roll on a mat, step over this, jump on that, basic physical stuff. I'm not saying you take every kid and start them with resistance training. It depends on the individual, but there is something physical you can have these kids do. And also a big part of it, to me anyways, is that they enjoy it. Teach them that physical activity and stress physically outside of their comfort zone is a good thing and it's fun. It's fun and we've all learned that. We've had to be in the game we're in, for you to compete as a bodybuilder. And for Jarrell to be a weightlifter and me and Mike, like at some point we realized we enjoyed pushing outside of our comfort zone. And that's how we reach. Like you have to get out of your comfort zone to reach something greater than you are. Like we talked about with nutrition. Like I have to, if you want to excel, and I had to explain this to my almost 80-year-old father the other day who's been doing the same workout for 10 years. Like I always go in and I use this much weight for this many reps. Why aren't I getting anywhere? Because you haven't fucking done anything that your body doesn't know how to do.
Progression. Yeah.
You have to get out of that comfort zone to make progress. And that's the same in every field, mental, everything. Like if you just keep doing the same math problem, you're not going to get better at math. You're going to get better at that one problem.
I guess I'll ask. I kind of know where you're at with it, Phil, just because I've
Been
trained
around.
with you for a while. But like, what are some? If you were to say manhood, womanhood, you have to reach, just like we have high school graduation.
Oh God.
What are some like physical standards that you guys would say are like just before you even get your license, before you get your 18-year-old ID to do anything? What are like physical standards that you would, and like one or two, like keep the list short, but like what would be physical standards that you guys would find acceptable? Like now you can vote. Like now you're allowed to vote, kind of thing. Physical
So
standard.
you mean for like non-athletes?
Yeah, just like
Just adult.
for you to say, yeah, just adult, like to get into adulthood, to go from, like high school, school age to an adult, and you would say, all right, this person, I respect your vote now. Now that you can do these baseline physical standards, you can vote, you can, health insurance, whatever, right? What would you guys say are like like one or two for you guys that are like rock bottom physical standards?
Rock bottom. See, that's interesting. Rob and I we did a podcast or two about like what is strong, like if you're going to compete, or something like that, and you don't want to embarrass yourself or whatever. But just for adults, now without just defaulting to the obvious answer, which is 50th percentile on norms tables. Well, norms tables, like we've talked about, every time they get updated, presumably they're worse.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
But I would think an adult, like an 18-year-old male, you would think, and super broad brush, right? And you guys, you guys can tear it down if you want. We got to start somewhere. But I would think a young man should be able to bench his body weight and do, 2 or 3 chin-ups, something like that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't even master your own weight. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. That's a really hard question, Jarrell.
It is hard because I have different, like I still catch shit from everybody. Every grown ass man should be able to deadlift 405 despite their body weight, and I still believe that. But I wouldn't say that's my baseline. I mean, I think you can have some respect in yourself then, because I've had 12-year-old kids that weigh 120 pounds deadlift 405. I mean, so you can't tell me a grown ass man can't do it. But I wouldn't say that's my baseline. I'd say I'd lean more towards you, like squatting and benching body weight. For God's sakes, that's not. You could do that in months. You should be able to, especially the squat. Like with just a little bit of training. Like for me to go in and squat 230 right now, like that's not that. If that's the baseline, that's not asking much. Unless you're physically fucked up. Then that's different. But for a healthy individual.
Yeah, I would go with, that sounds even more basic. If you're male, can you just give me 15 to 20 nice looking push-ups?
Yeah.
Like not with your neck going into the floor and looks like you're trying to hump the floor with your banana back or whatever the hell you're doing. Way too easy. But even when I was in college, when we were doing the 400 level labs, we had to do, physical testing and everything. And one of them was, hey, we'll have them do push-ups because there's, some norms and everything that Lonnie was saying. I don't think a single person in there did what I would call a passable push-up. And when you had them try to, make it look like a real push-up, it was shocking how many people couldn't do like 2 or 3 reps.
Yeah.
I was like aghast. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then my other little metric, which again, it's hard to rate, would be, can you run at like 75% of your capacity and your form just looks like a human and it doesn't make me want to throw battery acid in my eyes as I watch you? Like, that would be my other little thing.
Yeah. Well, the bad thing is I think even our own, like I know my standards have dropped because the population's ability has dropped.
Yeah.
It takes maybe at most like a month, even with kids or whatever. I kind of have a baseline of just like goblet squat. I usually just use a kettlebell deadlift to start with the hinge, just because people's hinge movement is really bad. Like, you want to talk about movement that starting out, people just cannot control their hip without rounding their back. Like, hinge, but it's like a goblet squat, 10 for girls. It's always 10 at the 16 kilos, so 10 reps at 35, and it looks good all the way down, etc. And for guys, 10 with the 24 kilo before they even get to the bar. So, I mean, for me, it would be something like that. Before, like, you have to be able to start training. That's like my kind of level.
Yeah.
Mike brought up an interesting one with like what level of conditioning would you find acceptable?
God, that level is so low now. That's the hard part. Like the hard part is like anywhere we go is better than now is the hard part. And it's like, I want to go higher than I probably should just because that's where I feel the society should be. But my God, like the ability to go to the zoo and walk for hours and not be just killed is like that's the problem. Like we've gone so far the other way. It's kind of sickening how acceptance we've become of just physical inactivity.
That's an interesting way to put that, Phil. Like volume tolerance, right? Not just intensity tolerance, but like, if you can't walk around the neighborhood at some kind of local festival,
like if you can't basic life without being like we need to do something. The sad part is that's where we've reached. It's
so part of the reason I ask is because there is in the UK it's being pitched to do like the 2 years of military service or whatever is like mandatory for all citizens or whatever, which one way or another. But one of the problems we have here with military service is just physical capacity. And so what if we were to implement something like that, like you have to do 2 years of service, and then that would require theoretically that we, without lowering a bar, creating a bar that most people can like get to and pass without problems. How do you, like, what would the standards be that we would find acceptable to go into that service? Like you start your service at that instead of in what the military guys call fat camp. Like if you're not in shape to go to boot camp, there's like this other camp you got to go, like walk the treadmill and lose weight and all that stuff. But so that's why I'm curious, like what standards you guys would hold as like, because in this case, you're looking at like citizenship, right? Like, so you have to cross a bar just to become a citizen in this like theory, right? So those standards I would even say without pretext. So you guys are like, here's where we are now. Like, let's hope we get this, but I'm curious what you guys aspirationally would hope for. Like really what you're like, I would be proud of our society if we got our people to this level before they became a citizen. This is the physical standard.
It's a good point you had about like fat camp, or, I mean, we do that with cognition. Like you go to junior college. If you're not ready for college, you'll go to junior college until you can bridge up to a certain point. Yeah. Right. So, but if we talk about physical standards, all of a sudden people are aghast. Can't. Now, nobody's saying, obviously, there's such a thing as adapted physical education, right? If you for some physical reason you can't do this, legitimate reason.
Yes. That's different.
That's different, right? We're talking about general healthy people who are trainable and standard kind. If we pitch a standard movement here, then they can do it. Anatomically, they can do it, or they don't have an underlying disease or something like that. But that's tough, man, because presumably it'd be more than body weight.
Yeah, I'd say my bar's really low, though. Like, I'm at the point now where I feel like for school kids, like, our society has reached a point where I think it'd be smart to implement some kind of physical standard to, like, graduate.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to graduate without, like, and my bar would be so low, like, literally locomote yourself a mile without dying. I'm not saying run. I'm literally like, get from point A to point B. And a lot of that would be mental toughness. Like, our people are fucking mentally weak.
That, right. I think that's the core of it, right? Is the mental, what we're really asking is what's the minimum amount of mental toughness that we would expect.
Because
it's funny that
anybody-
you said that, Phil. We had this discussion at a university. I'm going to be very vague here. About for ex-phys students, should we have physical standards? And that blew up fast that just was dismantled almost immediately. And it's like, but like we've all had people say, you look like you lift, or once I was in a nursing home with a colleague of mine, and one of the tenants said, you look like a dietitian. I don't know what that means other than I wasn't obese, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But yeah, should you functionally being able to exemplify the role? That's a loaded question. And like I said, it would have been fun to have you around that table, Phil.
Oh, God.
Everybody was immediately like, absolutely not. And it was just a floated brainstorming kind of thing. Like, right, if we go into the field, should we be able to be an example? Otherwise, it's like the obese smoking doctor telling you, to tighten down your diet and stuff when you're like, dude, really?
There is a large percentage of the population that if they were like driving their car and they were in the middle of nowhere, like there's nothing around, they were 1 mile away from their destination, like they couldn't fucking get there. Like, help, I need help. Like my standards right now are low. It's so low, and I'm sorry, I'll catch shit for this, but like if you can't walk a mile, you don't get to graduate high school.
Yeah.
Like you gotta go back. I don't care that you can do advanced trigonometry. Like, you are physically worthless. You are a drain on our society. But
you're right.
Seriously, like,
status.
but I mean, if we're truthful about this, like, if we graduate a bunch of people into adulthood that can't walk a mile, like, what is their impact on our health industry later in life? It has to be huge.
That's fair.
Like, there's definitely national security things at risk here, right?
Yes.
If we're that weak, and also like financial health of the country, because we're dumping gigantic amounts of money in to the teenagers that are already pre-diabetic, because like you said, all they've ever done is use their thumbs. In fact, Jarrell, to your point earlier, I know we're out of time here, but when you were saying what time frame did a lot of this happen? Because I think about being a kid in the 70s, right? What I watched happen was, in the 80s, it was okay too. It was about 1995 when Windows 95 came out, and then everybody had a computer. Bill Gates got rich. Everybody had a home computer. That was one step down, right, in physical activity. And then Phil made me think of it. And then in the early 2000s, what was it, like 04, 05? I can't remember when, like, Apple, like, iPhones became huge. But that was another step down, because now that computer isn't locked in your office at home. It's on your hip. So those were two, I think mid-90s and early 2000s were two big step downs in this ability to accept and even, tolerate or even want a little discomfort, because we didn't have to do it anymore. We were entertained all the time, pacified. Yeah,
and I'd also say, I'll look it up right now, it's also the advent of like the Atari. The first home gaming system. Like, we had video games as kids. You had to go to the arcade. Like,
right, yeah.
Once that home gaming system, like, it was always accessible. That was another one of those things. The kids had entertainment. Like, kids today, one big thing I see too, it's totally out of the physical realm, is like they don't know how to be bored.
Oh no.
They have no clue how to be bored. Like, I have to deal with that with my son. Like, you're gonna sit in the car, we're gonna drive somewhere for 2 hours, and you're going to look out the window and entertain yourself. Like, they don't have that fucking ability. Like, I see kids, they go to eat, they can't sit and have a meal with people for 45 minutes and not be entertained. Like, boredom is a skill, and it's okay. Like, my dumbass will go sit in a field for 7 hours waiting for a deer to walk out. But I mean, that's a skill that we have to get. It's like, you don't need to be entertained by, like, I feel like kids are like kings from the 1500s, where they have like jesters and shit coming in and entertaining all of them. Like, you don't need to be entertained all the time.
Minions dance.
Yes. Entertain me, peasants.
Yeah, not to Well, I know we're basically at time so just within that, as far as like citizenship, or I've posed it here with some of the people here as all right, the United States is like, we're going to offer free health insurance, but you have to meet these physical standards.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know how active our like Facebook group and like the listener, I'd be really curious to see what kind of answers people have is like, what is a physical standard that you'd be like, if people can cross this bar and, like that's significant. Free healthcare is significant. I like the citizenship one just because it reminds me of Starship Troopers. And it's like, you have to must be a contributing citizen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious what people's like, just with the range of like, our listeners and everyone, like what physical standards, like one or two that you're like, if they cross this bar, I would be like, all right, free health insurance, fine. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or, you can say whatever it is. I'm curious.
That's actually really, because that gets it starts sounding a little political. I don't look at the world blue versus red, but
Mm-hmm.
it does kind of like, it balances personal responsibility with what a lot of people would call entitlements. Like if I were to get free health care, you bet your ass, even as a cranky old man, I would be trying to make sure I met that minimum. But it's like Phil said, it's got to be minimum adult standard, not athlete, minimum adult standard.
Not athlete. So I'm not.
Right.
I mean, I'll give one conditioning one that I kind of like, just because most people can. It doesn't take long at all. Is like under 10 minutes for a 2K on the rower.
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, or even let's say you can pick a 2K row or a mile run or something, and then you just get under 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's simple, right? Like something is simple standard. I mean, it's not crazy. I'm not.
And
so
I would think
that's
age.
That's one conditioning one.
You got to think about age too, because like my max heart rate is not what it used to be. It can't be, it comes down with age, 220 minus rate. So some of this stuff, you might cut a little bit of slack as you get older, as far as body fatness or, cardio, but at the same time, not completely eliminated. Oh, you crossed age 50, you're done. It's like, whoa. I'm not physically invalid right now. So
yeah, there'd have to be age standards for sure, but
I'm just from 18, we'll say 18 to like retirement age, like 65, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe there's physical standards for Social Security, right? Something like that. You can change it or whatever by the time you get to that, but just in that range.
I agree at all, but you're pissing a lot of people off right now.
I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying. But I'm curious if I don't know how we get people to participate and stuff, but if that question is posed, I'd be curious what the listeners think.
It is one way to at least float this idea of personal responsibility versus entitlement, and that would even extend to stuff like universal basic income or a lot of the stuff that people are floating now. Like, how do you earn that on some level? I mean, again, with exceptions for extreme age or, a diagnosis, a disease. I mean, come on, nobody's saying that. I think the real key is, like Phil said, super minimum. Like this has to be super minimum. So you're right. So you're not getting a $2,000 ambulance call because your car broke down half a mile from your driveway.
Or like we've seen now, like if you like die and they have to bring a wrecker in to get your body out of your house, you did something fucking wrong. Like
that took some effort.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like we're in the world of like no fat shaming and stuff, but maybe we should at a point.
After some point.
If your number starts with a 5 and has 2 numbers behind it, you're somewhere that you had to try to get to.
Right. There's been some effort there. Yeah, you've overdone it to achieve. That's an achievement in the wrong direction.
Yeah, like your taxes should go up. At a certain weight load, like you're paying 30% taxes, bro.
I know we have some British listeners, and they're probably, I've seen videos of British people being aghast at some of our, like, you guys get charged for a pregnancy? It's how much? Or an ambulance call? Because they don't, most developed countries don't get this kind of stuff.
No.
And if we're going to do this here in this, great American experiment with capitalism and everything else, everything is becoming commoditized. Mm-hmm. But you also don't want to live in a police state. Your point about Starship Troopers, you don't want to, I don't know if I want to live in that world.
That's where our entry level now would have to be extremely low. Now, we can always change that after a generation. But for now, because of how far we've slipped, it needs to be low. We just need to bring our baseline up.
Well, and I think one way to do that would be carrot, not stick. You get certain rewards, not punishments. I want to earn those rewards, so I think I'm going to drop 10 pounds, or whatever it is, or start walking a half a mile in the morning with my wife or something like that.
I hate running. But if you just told me if I'm able to do this, I get free healthcare, my ass is running.
Oh, man.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
Man.
So I'm curious. I mean, I'll pose it to the listeners too, but I'm curious what a physical standard you would accept as roughly physical standard that you would accept as, all right, cross this bar, whatever benefit you want. I like the health insurance one. Yeah.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, we better call it. I got to get to football practice. So I got to take a bunch of little kids and make sure they're not worthless.
Introduce them to discomfort.
Introduce them to discomfort. And my big push is realize it's fun. That's my big push with kids. It's come on, guys, this physical stuff can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
it's a challenge. It's the growth mindset. You just got to teach them that growth mindset, man.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Until next week.
See ya.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.